Today we're going to talk about how to love somebody who makes you mad. It's very important to know how to deal with anger, especially in your love relationships. We're doing a terrible job of that all over the world. We're trying to relate, have relationships, have conflict, and yet we're not doing it very well at all. Look at the divorce rate. That tells us that it's very difficult for us to know how to be angry and how to be loving at the same time. You can do both of these things. You can be loving and you can be angry at the same time. But you've got to learn the difference between the anger of hope and the anger of despair. Anger of hope says, I'm mad because I know we can be better. I know we can do this better, and I'm mad because I know we can do this better. That's anger of hope. That is very constructive, and we're going to talk about exactly how to do that, how to have the anger of hope in your love relationships. But that's very different from the anger of despair. The anger of despair says, I give up. I can't do this. I want out. I quit. The anger of despair is not constructive. It's very destructive. And we're going to talk about the difference between those two so you can understand how to have the anger of hope and not the anger of despair in your love relationships. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between the anger of hope and the anger of despair. Let's start with what anger is not, okay? Anger is not violence. Now, violence is the use of aggressive force that violates the boundaries of other people. There's lots of psychological research on violence. It's very interesting that if you watch kids who are angry and protecting their boundaries, this is called aggression, the force to protect your boundaries, kids who watch other kids being aggressive don't become aggressive. But if you have videos of kids being violent, which is using that same aggressive force to violate the boundaries of someone else, kids who watch those videos of kids being violent towards other kids become violent. So violence begets violence. But it's not necessarily the case when you see people with healthy aggression that it makes other people aggressive. So aggression is the force to protect your boundaries. Violence is that same force used to violate the boundaries of someone else. That is something that perpetuates itself. When you're violent towards someone else, they want to be violent back towards you. When you violate the boundaries of somebody else, they want to violate your boundaries back. Violence breeds violence. And not all anger is violent. Violence is different than anger. That's the first thing that anger is not. The second thing that anger is not is hostility. Anger is an emotion that's intended to be experienced immediately and to be utilized immediately. Hostility is anger that's ongoing. So hostility is when you get angry, you're not using your anger for its appropriate purpose, and you let it go on and on and on. Hostility is ongoing, it's abiding, it's habitual. Hostility is not the same thing as anger. Hostile people are people we are not to hang around because they're angry all the time. The third thing that anger is not is hatred. Hatred is hardened hostility. So there's anger, which is an emotion which is intended to be expressed. There's hostility, which is ongoing anger. It's not being utilized in its appropriate way. And if that goes on long enough, it becomes hatred. In marriage, we call it contempt. I have worked with couples that have had anger that's gone on to hostility, that's gone on to hatred, because for year after year after year, they don't resolve their anger in constructive ways, and they actually get to a place where they have contempt for each other. It's a very sad thing to see people come into your office who've been married for years, and they actually are contemptuous towards each other. It's because anger was not used for its intended purpose. It's been allowed to go on and on and on, and it's hardened into hostility and contempt. You can separate these things out. You can have anger in your life without it becoming violence, without it becoming hostility, without it becoming hatred. But you've got to use anger for its intended purpose. All right, so that gets us to the question of, well, what is anger? Anger is energy to solve a problem. That's what it is. It's like the red light on your dashboard. When the red light lights up, what you don't do is tap on the light or try to replace the light or get mad at the light. The light signals you to the fact that there's a problem under the hood. So what you need to do is look at the light, the anchor, and know that it's signaling you to a deeper problem that you need to take care of. Anger is energy to solve a problem. It's automatic. It's like touching your eye with your finger. It'll water, it's automatic. Anger is the same thing. If you're in a certain crisis situation that needs you to jump into energy mode and fix the problem, you'll get angry. Angry is that energy to solve a problem. Anger is a state of physiological arousal. It's a state of readiness. It's a state in which you are ready to jump in and take action because action is needed. So what's the action that's needed? Anger is always a secondary emotion, meaning there's always a primary emotion underneath your anger. So if you're angry, it signals you to the fact that you've got a deeper problem you've got to address. Anger is always pointing you to something deeper. And what's deeper? There are three most common things that underlie anger are hurt, fear, and frustration. Hurt, fear, and frustration. The next time you get angry, if you ask yourself, what's hurting me, what's scaring me, what's frustrating me, you're going to be able to dig down underneath your anger and get to the real problem. Anger itself rarely solves the problem. It just gives you the energy to address the problem. You've got to be sophisticated enough to figure out what the problem is. Most of the time, it's going to be hurt, fear, and frustration. That's where the problem is. So the next time you get angry, know this. My anger is pointing me to something under the hood. My anger is pointing me to something that's hurting me, that's scaring me, that's frustrating me. And if you get to that issue, you're likely to then start addressing the real root of the problem. And that's what your anger is energizing you to do, to get to the root of the problem. Anger is an emotion, but your behavior is what you do with your anger. You may not be able to control the feeling, but you can control your behavior. And that's where people get into trouble. You have to know that it's up to you to control your behavior once you are angry, because you are responsible for your behavior. That you choose. Anger you don't choose, your behavior you do. You're responsible for that. And remember, anger is one letter away from danger. It's very dangerous when you're angry to misuse your anger and choose the wrong behavior because of it.